the do-it-yourself guide to business buying. This is the pre-planning video. Welcome, business buyers. What is the goal of our pre-planning video? It's to be prepared. Pre-planning is lining up everything you need to buy a business before you actually need it. You want to avoid the delays that can jeopardize closing your deal. You don't want to get bogged down mid-deal. And it starts with identifying what you're going to need. Here are the steps that we identified in our overview, and the first question is outside information needed to complete any of the steps? Well, that's an easy yes. For example, if we want to value the business, we need historical comps to do that valuation. Why not find the data on comps ahead of time so we're ready to go when it's time to value the business? That's pre-planning. The second question, are you going to outsource any of the steps? Another easy yes. More than one example, but let's assume that we're going to use a financial broker to help us raise the money. We want to identify that person ahead of time so they're ready when needed. That's also part of pre-planning. Third question, are tools or templates going to be needed for any of the steps? Yes, of course. As an example, if we're going to structure the offer, we typically use a deal model as part of a spreadsheet to check out the best structuring options based upon the valuation. So we're going to find one to use in pre-planning. And the fourth question, will you follow a predetermined strategy for some of the steps? Yeah, I could see that happening. For example, if we're screening deals, we need to predetermine what the ideal target profile is going to be in order to create the screening checklists. So we want to sort that out in our business buying playbook. Now we can bring them all together in our pre-planning to-do list: information, relationships, tools, and a playbook. Of course, your to-do list might look a little different than this one, but the whole point is to create a pre-planning to-do list. In fact, it's one of the two main takeaways of this video. The first takeaway was to define what's meant by pre-planning. I think we've done that. And the second main takeaway was to introduce a pre-planning to-do list. And we've done that as well. And so really, you could stop watching now and start your own pre-planning, or stay around, see some examples. The rest of the video is going to walk through different examples of things that we would include in our pre-planning to-do list. Let's drill down a little bit on information. When it comes to pre-planning, there are two questions on information that we want answered. What information is needed, and where can I find it? Let's look at an example. We've already talked about industry comps or selling multiples, and the question is, what have similar businesses historically sold for? Is there published data on previous deals that's available to us? And the answer is yes. Well, we need to get access to that data to value our target businesses and to put together offers. Where can we find it? Well, there are published sources on selling multiples. The one I prefer is Deal Stats. It has lots of granularity, but it's not the only game in town. There's lots of published sources that provide multiples on historical businesses. I'm not going to go through them all, but if you want to take a look, the links are on Circle. But please note, before I get off this topic, we have to compare like to like when we're talking about comps. You have to compare businesses the same size, same industry, and same profile, public versus private. Otherwise, the comps aren't really usable, so keep that in mind. But in terms of our pre-planning to-do list, yeah, we can add historical comps if we don't have that information, because we're certainly going to need it when we're business buying. Next, industry regulations. In regulated industries, there are rules on ownership, rules on licensing, and rules on professional registrants. And so if you're thinking of buying a business that's in a regulated industry, you need to think through some of these issues. Let's say you're thinking of buying a construction business in California. Is that a regulated business? For sure. Therefore, you need to check the contractor license. The contractor license is often an issue because the seller holds the license and the seller is leaving. So what do? Does it mean your deal is dead? No, of course not. It means you need a workaround to resolve the issue. And that's why we do pre-planning, to sort out those kinds of issues. Another example, do you need to be an architect to own an architecture firm? Well, that depends on the location of the target business. The rules differ state by state, sometimes significantly, so best to check ahead. But if we're pre-planning and we're planning to buy a business in a regulated industry, checking for regulatory compliance issues definitely belongs on our to-do list. And the last example on information are public websites that list businesses for sale that are worth monitoring. I'm going to show you the 4 kinds of lists that I regularly monitor. Websites that feature bricks and mortar businesses for sale is one. Websites featuring online businesses. Of course, there are business brokers that are selling businesses, and businesses that charge you for deal flow. I like to keep track of them all and see what's out there. Let me start with websites that feature bricks and mortar businesses for sale. Biz Buy Sell is the big one, but there are a lot more out there. This is only a partial list. The full list is on Circle. That's true for all the lists I'm about to present you. Number 2 are online businesses for sale. My first stop is usually micro-acquire, but there are plenty more. Number 3, business brokers selling businesses. Some business brokers are international, some national, some regional. I usually start with Sunbelt and Transworld, but there are a lot more to choose from. And do-it-for-you specialists that you can pay to find leads. I know the people at Outflow, so I like to keep track of them, but there are other people in that business. I like to take a look at all of them every once in a while. I like to monitor websites featuring businesses for sale. That's part of the information that I have on my pre-planning to-do list. Keep that current, make some changes. I find it really helps. Next is relationships. When we're pre-planning, we have 3 questions on relationships. 1, are we planning to outsource steps? Number 2, who will be doing the work? And number 3, do we have the people lined up? If we go back to our steps, we ask, which steps do we plan to outsource? Well, when we go down our list, it's easy to see that due diligence and buy-sell agreement, we're going to need a lawyer for both of those. And if we don't have one, we add lawyer to our list. We look at analyzing the financials. We might decide to do it ourselves, but if not, we're going to need an accountant or a financial analyst. If we don't have one, we add accountant to our list. And what about finding the money? If we decide we're going to get help finding the money, we need a financial broker. If we don't have one, we add financial broker to our list. That's how it works. And I want to focus on these 3 relationships: lawyer, accountant, and financial broker. If you've added them to your list, where do you find the providers? Where do you find the bodies? Let's start with finding a lawyer. It's always best to find a lawyer through personal referrals, but if you can't, checking referral sites can also work well. This is a key relationship, so we want to make sure we get the right person. In terms of referral sites, I've used UpCounsel, but there are lots of other ones that you can check out. The full list is on Circle. But the main point is, on your to-do list, mark under relationships that you need a lawyer, and the goal is to have a working relationship with that lawyer before you actually need them on your first deal. Finding an accountant is exactly the same drill. Best to find an accountant through personal referrals if you can. If you can't, check a referral site for accountants. I've used TopTal, but there are lots of other ones. Some of them are dedicated to financial people and accountants. Full list is on Circle. Don't forget to mark it on your to-do list. You need an accountant. But the goal is what? The goal is to establish that working relationship before you need their accounting services. You want everything lined up and ready to go. And of course, finding a financial broker. Same thing. Sometimes they're called a loan broker. They're not always easy to find. They do take some effort. Quite often, it's harder to find a financial broker than a lawyer or an accountant, but it's definitely worth it, especially if you're a first-time dealmaker. The tricky part of working with financial brokers, of course, is that lots of lenders provide asset-backed loans. But we're looking for a subset of those lenders. Lenders who are okay if the secured loan is being used as acquisition debt to buy the very company whose assets are securing the loan that we just took out. That takes more digging and sorting, but there are definitely lenders out there that do that, of course, and there are financial brokers who can help you find them. And there are referral sites for financial brokers. I usually start with Lendio, but then I'll check out the rest. Full list on Circle. And when I get to my to-do list under relationships, I'm going to mark that I need a financial broker. That's only half of it. The main thing is the working arrangement. We need to have one in place before we actually need that financial broker. We don't want to have an LOI signed where exclusivity expires in 75 days and we're starting to look for the money then. We don't have a financial broker. We don't have any connections. It is just too late. So get this out of the way early. Let's take a quick look at tools. We want to avoid having to build everything we use from scratch. That would be time consuming. For example, a financial deal model. This is an Excel spreadsheet / financial model that I developed many years ago. For me, it simplifies valuation, gives me flexibility in deal structuring. I use it on every single deal. I really couldn't do deal making without it. Mine looks a little bit like this. I think it has been revised since. If you don't have one, under Tools, mark Financial Deal Model, and then figure out a way to get your hands on one. Whether you borrow one, there are commercial products available too. See if you can't get your hands on one to make things a little easier on the financial analysis side of things. Next, cash flow template. Same drill, we need cash flow forecasts for year one in every single deal. We want to assess the cash cushion of the business in that critical first year. It's also required as part of our due diligence. So if you don't have that tool, put it on your to-do list. You need a cash flow template and figure out a way to get your hands on one before you get started. And last, the offer letter template. Same idea. Once again, it's just a starting point to compose our offer letters so we're not staring at a blank sheet of paper. Hey, it's a lot easier to modify or edit an existing offer than it is to write one from scratch. I have templates on hand for both offer letters, different offer letters as a matter of fact, and an LOI. You'll save a ton of time. Let's talk about the playbook. Let's predetermine how we're going to handle repetitive things that happen all the time. Now, the playbook can be broad in scope. It typically addresses issues related to, philosophy, strategy, tactics, decisions, approaches. It also tends to be highly individualized to deliver value to you, but that makes sense. It is your playbook. I want to look at an example around ideal target profile, the kinds of businesses that we pursue. It's best explained with an example. I'm going to use a great holding company that I've been following for years. They've made 60 plus Main Street acquisitions over the last 15 years. What do they have in their playbook around ideal target profile? Well, they only pursue target businesses with this profile. Number one, the current owners must be retiring. Number two, they must acquire 100% of the equity and have no equity partners. And number three, the seller must accept a 25% earnout. They're pretty dogmatic on all three. Now, they arrived at all three after careful consideration, which is what you'd expect with a playbook. Am I suggesting you should embrace this as your ideal target profile? No, not necessarily, not at all. But we are recommending that you include in your playbook your equivalent. What's your ideal target profile? Put that in your playbook. Next is proof of funds. How do we respond to proof of fund requests? It's a pretty common request from sellers and especially brokers. They won't give us the financials of a business unless we show them that we have the money to buy that business. So work out your response, and no, I'm not suggesting you send your bank statement. If you're not sure how to respond, watch our video on it. You'll get some good suggestions. And then take your response and include it in your playbook for when you get future proof of fund requests. That's how it works. We put it in our playbook, we refine it over time. And last, I want to take a look at overall business buying philosophy. I think this one's also best explained with an example, this time from the master, Warren Buffett. I want to share his investing philosophy. It's been a big part of his playbook for over 60 years. At Berkshire, they focus business buying on 4 principles. Number 1, they buy good businesses with strong intrinsic value. Number 2, acquired at a fair price. Number 3, the business has to be within their circle of competence. And number 4, there has to be the potential to hold the target business forever. Of course, that greatly narrows the scope of potential targets that they would pursue, but I think that's the whole idea. So by all means, put your business buying philosophy in your playbook. That's where it belongs. So there you have it. Here's our pre-planning to-do list. Covers information, relationships, tools, and the playbook. Now, if you did this on your own, yours would probably look different than this, different categories, different items underneath those categories. So think about this, do some pre-planning, get things ready to go, spend some time up front. You'll be glad you did. It'll pay off big time. That's pre-planning. It does require us getting into the weeds a little bit, but that's fine. Success happens in the details. Pre-planning is 100% worth the effort, especially for new deal makers. So let's get after it. This has been the Do-It-Yourself Guide to Business Buying. This is the pre-planning video. Remember, we always want to learn and grow as we go. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.